I received a review copy of Imagician from the distributor, so thank you to Hachette Boardgames UK. So by now you know how this starts. The hook. What's special about this game? There are thousands of games we could be playing, so why should we care about this one?
The great grimoire of imagination contains mysterious imagic spells. If you succeed in deciphering them, you can conjure amazing shapes in the sky, on the water, or in the midst of tree leaves.
What?
Old Imagicians even claim these spells can make dreams more beautiful.
I'm sorry, you've lost me. What's this game about?
You need to decipher the imagic spells because you are only an apprentice Imagician. Will you be able to understand what takes shape in front of your eyes?
Sounds deep, almost spiritual.
Nah, not really. It's just connect the dots.
I'm Adam Porter. I make games, and recently I've been reviewing games, but specifically analysing them as products. There are many other videos on my channel about product design if you fancy checking them out, and I'll be talking about the gameplay too, so you should get an idea of whether the game might be fun for you. So Imagician is a 2020 release from French publisher Blam and designer Oliver Mahy. It's for 2 to 4 players and takes around 20 minutes to play. Each player is given a grid with loads of little icons, and a card is revealed with a small selection of these icons which players need to join up with a dry erase marker on their own board. If there's a star alongside the icon, then the line should be curved. If the icon isn't connected to any others, you circle it. When one player has drawn enough lines to identify the image, they write down their guess, flip the timer, and then every other player has 30 seconds to finish their drawing and make their own guess. The correct answer is checked by comparing the number on the card to the list on the back of the rulebook, and players score a point for a correct guess and a bonus point if they were the first player to make a guess. The process is repeated for 8 rounds, and the highest overall scorer wins. So let's get straight into a customer journey map. Here you can see my mood from the moment I first heard of the game, learning the rules, playing for the first time, and putting it away. And you can see that I was quite excited about the game before I played it, and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't blown away. So if we plot some pain points onto the map, interaction is one of the only things that I found to be a problem in this game. If a player thinks that they've identified the drawing, even off the back of drawing just 2 or 3 small lines, they can make a guess and flip the timer, giving other players 30 seconds to finish what they're doing. The problem is that players can guess the image well before it's completed. They may not be right, but it doesn't stop players taking a shot at it, and this ruins the experience for everyone else. In a game like this, the most fun part is the moment that that image is completed, the mystery solved. If another player can dictate the end of the round prematurely, it robs everyone else of the best bit, the realisation of what you've been drawing. Every game box makes a promise. The size of the box, the art, the setting, the name. Imagician's box cover is beautiful, with a magician conjuring the image of a butterfly in the sky. My expectation upon seeing this box cover was that it would be a creative game with lots of beautiful artwork. The cover recalls the sort of cards that you see in Dixit or Muse or Mysterium. But the game doesn't really deliver on this promise. The images you create are, by necessity, very basic. Traditional connect-the-dots activities lend themselves to detailed, attractive line drawings. In Imagician, you're each going to generate a blocky, very simplified representation of a random object. And often, the image is pretty hard to decipher. The grid is just too limiting to include any real detail. Nonetheless, the fresh concept and the pretty art was enough to get me intrigued. I was really keen to play, and thankfully the rulebook's really good. There's no problem with onboarding here. The rules direct you to start playing with the simplest cards and gradually build up to the more challenging ones. That said, even the most challenging mode is really quite simple. We were up and running in no time. Imagician is not the sort of game where you're likely to get competitive. Winning is always nice, but in this game, I didn't get much of a kick out of it. Losing, on the other hand, isn't fun at all, for the same reasons that we've discussed above. If you don't win, it's likely that you won't get to complete your image. And that's a shame, because it's the most fun part of the game. My star system considers how engaging a game is. We score each game between 0 and 3 in 5 different categories. So let's start with theme and narrative. There's no theme. Imagician is a party game. The cover art is nice, as are the icons on the player's grids, but the images you create don't match the setting. There's nothing very mystical about drawing a scooter, a slug, or some stairs, so I can't award it any points. My next category is interaction, and the game does feature a racing element, but the players can do nothing to hamper their opponents, apart from spotting icons quicker than they manage. It's very much a solitary activity under time pressure, with the interaction serving to frustrate players rather than enhance the gameplay. So it scores a 1. Category 3 is challenge and stress. An Imagician scores better here. Because you're working under time pressure, you do feel mounting tension as you try to seek out the icon that you need. They're cleverly drawn to look just similar enough to confuse the players. You can find yourself glossing over the same icon time and again before you finally spot it. It feels quite a lot like Where's Wally or Micro Macro Crime City. There's also a clever catch-up mechanism, where if you're scoring well, you're forced to play on the back of the board where the colour's removed from the images. The game offers an enjoyable challenge, so Imagician scores a 2. Category 4, feedback, is again lacking. When you identify the image that you're creating, you simply stop playing and wait for the other players. It's only 30 seconds, but then you discover whether you were correct or not. There's a brief moment of satisfaction, but if you enjoy a game which gives you a hearty pat on the back from time to time just to keep you motivated, well, this game's going to disappoint, so it gets a 1. And my final category is meaningful choices, and once again there really aren't any. I suppose your final guess of the completed image might count here. It takes a tiny bit of brain power, but in reality the game's all about going through the motions. Find the icon, draw a line, try and finish before the other players. So I'm giving it a 1. So the final score's in, and we can now place the game onto my engagement ladder. And a score of 10 or above would propel the game to the top of the ladder and is likely to indicate a real favourite with me. But sadly, Imagician doesn't climb very high, and this surprises me because I was really looking forward to playing the game. It sounded great, but ultimately the score does match my experience. I enjoyed playing a few games of it, but I have no particular desire to play over and over again. So if we move on to my product design checklist, number 1, is the game innovative? Well, the game is basically just a head-to-head race to be the first to complete a simple connect the dots exercise. So it's hard to declare the game as highly innovative, but I haven't seen the activity gamified in this way before. So I do think the designer did well to spot the possibility and the potential in this activity. The most similar games that I know of are Libelud's Looney Quest and Happy Baobab's Decalco, though both of these are mechanically very distinct from Imagician. In Looney Quest, players are tasked with drawing lines onto an acetate sheet, which will then be placed over a central image with bonuses, penalties, and other special icons on it. And if you cross these icons with your line, or if you avoid them, well, that's the goal of the game. You're going to get bonuses or penalties. The bonuses might allow you to mess with the other opponents, forcing them to draw with their other hand, or maybe balancing a token on the end of their pen, and so on. It's really fun, with loads of variety, a high level of interaction, and a really great example of a game which does provide constant feedback to the players. The flip side of that is that the game is more complex by several orders of magnitude than Imagician, providing a significant barrier to entry. An illustration of the constant balance that game inventors strive for between accessibility and depth. Decalco from Happy Baobab is a much simpler design. Indeed, it advertises itself as the easiest drawing game in the world. In this game, every player races to trace an image and then hides the original, and the other players have to guess what you've traced. The game lives up to its slogan. It couldn't be easier to set up and play, but of course, that leaves the gameplay feeling a little bit repetitive. Aside from the superficial similarities with these two games, Imagician does stand alone as a unique little title in the hobby. So the second question on my product design checklist is, does it solve a need? And no, I don't think it really does. There are plenty of fun drawing games. There are loads of logic puzzles, and Micro Macro is taking the gaming world by storm with its Where's Wally style gameplay. I like the activity in Imagician, but I'm not sure it's going to fill a void in a gamer's experience or in their collection. So number 3, a great product grows with its user. The experience gets richer and deeper as they explore the depths of the product that they've purchased. The Imagician rulebook advertises an upcoming pack of additional cards. I mean, there are loads to get through in that base game alone, but if you really loved the game, I suspect you'd get through those cards eventually, so a new card pack might be appealing. I think it would be great if the card pack introduced a couple of new rules for drawing, rather than just new images, but I don't know whether that's the case or not. Number 4, branding. Well, I don't see huge opportunities here. The cover art is beautiful, but it is generic. The name is distinctive, but it's hard to pronounce, and hence is hard to remember. The gameplay is simple and predictable. I think it would be really hard to build a brand around this game. So let's return to the initial hook, a magic-themed race to connect the dots. How strong an idea is that? Well, I think it's okay. I'm always impressed when designers spot a traditional activity which they can gamify, but Imagician scored low on my engagement ladder, so I'm going to reflect that here. I think the execution is pretty good though. The rules are well explained, the components work well, and there's plenty of content. I would have preferred a more literal box cover. This is basically an abstract drawing game, so I think a descriptive cover like that used for Telestrations or Duplicate would work well here. So I've knocked the game down a little for its fancy artwork, which might mislead someone into thinking they're picking up something thematic or creative. Nonetheless, the execution elevates the game a lot, and it pushes into the green section, which generally means that the game's going to be a success. I would anticipate that Imagician will sell pretty well, and most people are going to really enjoy a handful of games before moving on to titles with a little bit more depth. Ultimately, I like the game. It's charming, it's attractive, and it's different to almost anything else in my collection. I enjoy playing oddities like this from time to time. I guess I was just hoping for a little bit more.
So don't forget to subscribe and comment and hit the bell for notifications when I post new videos, and I'll see you next time. All the best.